The delivery room at Boston Memorial Hospital was supposed to be my sanctuary, a place where my husband James and I would welcome our daughter into the world. Instead, it became the battlefield where my 5-year marriage began to crumble. "Push, Eliza. You're almost there," Dr. Matthews encouraged, her calm voice cutting through my exhaustion. After 18 hours of labor, my body trembled with fatigue. James stood beside me, his hand loosely holding mine, his eyes darting nervously between me and the door. I'd noticed his distraction all day, how he kept checking his phone, how his reassurances felt hollow. "She's coming," the nurse announced. "One more big push." With a final guttural cry, I felt my daughter slide into the world. Her first wail filled the room. Strong, defiant, beautiful. Tears streamed down my face as they placed her tiny, vernix-covered body on my chest. "She's perfect," I whispered, counting her fingers, marveling at her rosebud lips. That's when the door burst open. My mother-in-law, Vivian Blackwell, swept in like a hurricane in her tailored Chanel suit and pearl necklace. Behind her, my father-in-law, Richard, followed, his expression grim beneath his silver hair. "Is it over? Let me see my grandchild," Vivian demanded, not even acknowledging me. The nurse frowned. "Ma'am, we're still completing medical procedures. You'll need to—" "Do you know who we are?" Vivian interrupted. "The Blackwell name is on the east wing of this hospital." I felt my daughter squirm against me as the tension in the room thickened. James, who should have intervened, remained silent, his gaze fixed on the floor tiles. "Let them see her," I said quietly, too exhausted to fight. Vivian approached, her expensive perfume overwhelming the clinical sense. She peered down at my daughter, and her expression shifted from anticipation to something darker. "That's unusual coloring," she said, her voice suddenly cold. My daughter's skin was several shades darker than mine or James's fair complexions. Her wispy hair formed tight curls against her head. "She doesn't look like a Blackwell at all," Vivian continued, her voice rising. "James, come look at this child." James finally approached, his face pale. He stared at our daughter, then at me, confusion and suspicion clouding his features. "James," I whispered, reaching for his hand. He pulled away. "That child is not family!" Vivian suddenly shouted, her voice echoing off the hospital walls. "Look at her! She's not a Blackwell!" The nurse stepped forward. "Mrs. Blackwell, you need to lower your voice. Don't tell me what to do when this woman has obviously betrayed my son." Vivian spat, pointing at me. "The baby is clearly not his." The accusation hit me like a physical blow. "What are you talking about? Of course she's James's daughter." "Then explain why she doesn't look anything like him, or you, for that matter." Vivian's perfectly manicured finger jabbed toward my baby. My daughter began to cry again, sensing the hostility surrounding her first moments of life. I cradled her closer, my own tears falling onto her delicate skin. "James, say something," I pleaded. But my husband just stood there, silent and cowardly, looking between his mother and me, as if weighing his options. His silence was worse than any accusation. "I think we need some genetic tests," Richard finally spoke, his corporate lawyer voice clinical and detached. "Before this goes any further." Dr. Matthews, who had been observing this appalling scene while completing my post-delivery care, finally straightened up. Her expression was thunderous. "Mr. and Mrs. Blackwell, I need you to step outside immediately," she said firmly. "This behavior is completely inappropriate." "Do you know who you're speaking to?" Vivian bristled. "I'm speaking to people who are distressing my patient and a newborn," Dr. Matthews replied evenly. "And if you don't leave voluntarily, I'll have security escort you out, regardless of whose name is on which wing." Vivian's face contorted with rage. "Come, James. We need to discuss this situation." The moment of truth had arrived. Would my husband of 5 years stand by me or follow his mother? James hesitated, looking at our daughter with uncertainty. I think I should go talk to them, Eliza, just to calm them down." My heart shattered as he backed away, following his parents out the door without so much as touching his daughter. The man who had promised to stand by me through everything had just abandoned me at the most vulnerable moment of my life. As the door closed behind them, Dr. Matthews placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. "I'm so sorry about that, Eliza. Let's focus on you and this beautiful baby now." But as I looked down at my daughter's innocent face, I wondered how our lives would ever be the same after what had just happened. 3 days later, I sat on the edge of my hospital bed, dressed in the loose clothes my sister Megan had brought me. My daughter, still unnamed, as James and I had planned to decide together after her birth, slept peacefully in the bassinet beside me. James had barely visited since the delivery room incident, offering only awkward, brief appearances when he knew his parents wouldn't be around. He had suggested we wait for the DNA results before naming our daughter. Each time he said it, another piece of my heart broke. "Ready to face the wolves?" Megan asked, entering with discharge papers. Her attempt at humor fell flat as she saw my expression. "Hey, you don't have to go back to that house, you know. Come stay with me and Tom." I glanced around the room, at the flowers sent by my colleagues at the elementary school where I taught, but nothing from the Blackwells. No congratulations, no acknowledgement of their granddaughter. "I need to go home and get some things first," I said quietly. "And I still hope James will come to his senses when the test results arrive." Megan frowned. "The fact that he even agreed to a test is unforgivable, Eliza. 5 years of marriage and he doesn't trust you. It's his parents. They've always had this hold over him." I gently lifted my sleeping daughter, marveling at how someone so small could create such a storm. The Blackwell family legacy and all that. "Legacy my ass," Megan muttered. "Their real estate empire isn't the British Crown." A knock at the door interrupted us. "Doctor?" Matthews entered, followed by a man I didn't recognize carrying a folder. "Eliza, how are you feeling today?" Dr. Matthews asked. "Physically or emotionally?" I attempted a smile. "One is definitely healing faster than the other." Dr. Matthews nodded sympathetically. "This is Dr. Patel, our genetics specialist. The DNA results you authorized are in." My heart pounded. That was fast. "The Blackwells requested expedited processing," Dr. Patel explained, his tone professional but kind. "Given the circumstances, of course they did. Nothing stood in the way of Vivian Blackwell getting what she wanted." "Is James coming?" I asked, looking toward the door. Dr. Matthews exchanged a glance with Dr. Patel. "He's in the family waiting room with his parents. They've requested to receive the results together." My face burned with humiliation. "So I'm to be tried and judged without even being present?" "Absolutely not," Dr. Matthews said firmly. "I insisted you receive the results first. As the mother, it's your right." Dr. Patel opened the folder. "Mrs. Blackwell, the paternity test confirms that James Blackwell is indeed the biological father of your daughter." Relief washed over me, quickly followed by anger. "Of course he is. I never doubted it for a second." "There is something else," Dr. Patel continued. "Something that explains your daughter's appearance, which seems to be the cause of concern." He handed me a paper with genetic markers highlighted in yellow. "These indicate the presence of African ancestry in your daughter's DNA profile," he explained. "Approximately 25% based on our analysis." I stared at the paper, confused. But how? Neither James nor I have African ancestry, as far as we know. "Actually," Dr. Patel said carefully, "the analysis shows these markers coming from the paternal side, from James." The room fell silent as the implication sank in. "You're saying," I began. "James has approximately 50% African ancestry in his genetic makeup," Dr. Patel confirmed. "Your daughter inherited about half of those markers, which is why her features are more pronounced than his." Megan gasped. But James looks completely white, like his parents. Dr. Matthews spoke gently. Genetics can be complicated. Sometimes recessive traits from generations back can become more prominent in children. Unless, I suddenly realized, those traits weren't from generations back at all. "I want to speak to my husband," I said, rising from the bed with my daughter in my arms. "Now." Dr. Matthews led us to the family waiting room. There, James sat between his parents on an expensive leather sofa. Vivian's perfectly highlighted hair and Richard's tailored suit made them look like they were at a board meeting rather than waiting for news about their grandchild. When we entered, James stood up awkwardly. Vivian remained seated, her eyes cold as they fixed on my daughter. "The results are in," I announced, my voice stronger than I expected. "She's your daughter, James, 100%. Relief flickered across his face, but Vivian scoffed. "There must be some mistake," she insisted. "Look at her, she doesn't look anything like a Blackwell." Dr. Patel stepped forward. "Actually, Mrs. Blackwell, she looks exactly like a Blackwell. According to the genetic analysis, your son has significant African ancestry, approximately 50%. The color drained from Vivian's face. Richard suddenly looked like he might be ill. "That's absurd," Vivian sputtered. "Our family lineage goes back to the Mayflower. We have documentation." "Genetics don't lie, Mrs. Blackwell," Dr. Patel said firmly, "and they tell a different story than your documentation." I watched as Richard placed a restraining hand on Vivian's arm, his knuckles white. A silent message passed between them, one born of decades of shared secrets. James looked between his parents, confusion clouding his features. "Mom? Dad? What's going on?" The silence that followed was deafening. Richard finally cleared his throat. "This is not the place for this discussion," he said stiffly, "but I had had enough of the Blackwell's secrets and manipulation." "I think it's exactly the place," I countered, cradling my daughter protectively. "Your granddaughter deserves to enter this world surrounded by truth, not more lies." The tension in that waiting room could have been cut with a scalpel. James stood frozen between his parents and me, his world visibly unraveling before his eyes. "What does this mean?" he finally asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Dad." Richard Blackwell, the titan of Boston real estate, whose stern portrait hung in the company headquarters, couldn't meet his son's gaze. His manicured hand trembled slightly as he adjusted his Rolex. "We should discuss this at home," he repeated more urgently this time. "No," James said, surprising us all with his firmness. "I want to know now. What aren't you telling me?" Vivian's perfectly composed facade began to crack. Her eyes darted to the doctors. "This is a private family matter. I must insist you leave us." "They stay," I said, matching her steel with my own. "After what you accused me of in the delivery room, you don't get to demand privacy now." My daughter stirred in my arms, her tiny fingers curling around mine as if lending me strength. In that moment, I felt a fierce protectiveness that overshadowed my exhaustion. Richard suddenly stood. "Vivian, it's over. We can't hide it anymore." He turned to James, his aristocratic features lined with decades of deception. "Son, you were adopted." The words hung in the air like smoke. "What?" James staggered backward as if physically struck. "That's not possible. I've seen my birth certificate. I've seen baby pictures." "Falsified," Richard admitted, his voice hollow. "We had connections. It was different back then." "Different how?" James demanded. Vivian stood now too, smoothing her skirt, as if proper appearance could somehow salvage this situation. "We couldn't have children. We tried for years. The specialists, the treatments. Nothing worked." "No, but maintaining the Blackwell lineage was paramount," Richard continued. "My father made it clear. Either I produced an heir or the company would go to my cousin's family." I watched James's face contort with disbelief. "So I was what? A business acquisition?" "You were our son," Vivian insisted, reaching for him. James recoiled from her touch. We gave you everything, the best schools, connections, opportunities. Except the truth, James whispered. Dr. Matthews stepped forward. Perhaps the bigger question is who James's biological parents actually are. Richard's shoulders slumped. Her name was Naomi Jackson. She worked as a housekeeper for one of our properties. She was young, unmarried, and in a difficult situation. You took advantage of a vulnerable employee? I asked, disgust rising in my throat. No! Richard looked genuinely horrified. It wasn't like that. She approached us. She knew our situation. She offered... For money, James concluded flatly. Richard couldn't deny it. We paid for her medical care. We set up a trust for her education. We made sure she was taken care of. And where is she now? James asked. My real mother. A heavy silence fell over the room. She died, Vivian finally said. Cancer, about 10 years ago. James closed his eyes, grief etching itself across his features for a mother he never knew existed. And my biological father? Another exchange of glances between Richard and Vivian. We don't know, Richard admitted. Naomi never told us. It wasn't part of our arrangement. The clinical term for what should have been the most human of connections made my stomach turn. So you just erased her, James said. Erased half of who I am. Let me grow up believing I was someone else. We gave you a better life than she could have, Vivian insisted. The Blackwell name, our connections. Your lies, James shouted, startling my daughter, who began to cry. He immediately lowered his voice, looking at her with new understanding. All these years, you've paraded your precious Mayflower ancestry, your colonial blue blood. You made me believe I was part of that legacy. You are a Blackwell, Richard insisted. Blood isn't everything. Except when it comes to my daughter, right? James fired back. The moment she didn't look like your fictional family portrait, you were ready to throw her away, to accuse my wife of betrayal. I bounced gently to soothe our daughter, watching this man I'd married finally stand up to his parents. Despite everything, I felt a glimmer of hope. We were shocked, Vivian tried to explain. We didn't understand. No, you were afraid, I interrupted. Afraid your precious secret would come out, that people might discover the Blackwell dynasty isn't what it pretends to be. Richard's face hardened. You have no idea the sacrifices we've made to build and protect this family. Family? James laughed bitterly. Is that what we are? Because from where I'm standing, I don't even know who I am anymore. He walked over to me, tentatively reaching out to touch our daughter's cheek. She quieted immediately under her father's touch, her eyes so much like his, gazing up trustingly. I do know one thing, he said softly. This child is mine, and unlike you, I won't let her grow up with lies. Dr. Patel cleared his throat. If it helps, we could try to trace your maternal lineage through genetic testing. There might be relatives, half-siblings, cousins, Dr. Matthews added, people who share Naomi's DNA. Hope flickered across James's face. Is that possible? With consumer DNA databases being so popular now, yes, Dr. Patel confirmed. Many people have found biological family they never knew existed. Vivian stepped forward, panic evident in her tightly controlled expression. James, think about what you're doing. The scandal, the publicity, what it could do to the company, to our reputation. James looked at her as if seeing her clearly for the first time. Is that really all you care about, even now? Richard placed a hand on his wife's shoulder. Vivian, it's over. We can't control this anymore. She shrugged him off. After everything we've done for you, she hissed at James. This is how you repay us? By destroying everything we've built? No, Mother, James said coldly. You destroyed it with your lies. He turned to me, genuine remorse in his eyes. Eliza, I'm so sorry. I should have stood by you. I should have trusted you. I wanted to forgive him instantly, but the wound was still too fresh. You let them humiliate me at the most vulnerable moment of my life, James. You let them accuse me of betraying you, and you said nothing. I know, he whispered. I don't deserve your forgiveness, but please believe that I want to make this right for you and our daughter. As if on cue, she cooed softly in my arms. She still needs a name, I said quietly. James looked down at her, then back at me. What do you think about Naomi? After your mother, I finished for him. Naomi Grace Blackwell. It felt right, honoring the woman whose truth had been buried for so long, while still carrying forward the name that despite everything was James's identity and now our daughter's. 1 month later, I sat in our living room, watching James carefully place Naomi in her bassinet. Our home, a brownstone in Cambridge, far more modest than the Blackwell mansion in Beacon Hill, felt different now. Lighter somehow, despite the weight of everything we were working through. She's finally asleep, James whispered, tiptoeing away. I think we have at least an hour. I nodded, closing my laptop where I'd been reviewing lesson plans for my eventual return to teaching. The lactation consultant was right about that swaddling technique. James settled beside me on the couch, maintaining the careful distance that had characterized our interactions since the hospital. We were in limbo, not separated, not reconciled, but trying to navigate parenthood amidst the ruins of deception that surrounded us. I heard from Dr. Patel today, he said, his voice tentative. The expanded DNA search found something. My heart quickened. What kind of something? A first cousin match on my mother's side, a woman named Layla Jackson living in Chicago. I reached for his hand instinctively. Despite my lingering hurt, I knew what this meant to him. Have you contacted her? He nodded. We spoke on the phone for 2 hours. She's my mother's niece. She has photos, Eliza, photos of Naomi when she was young. Tears welled in his eyes. I'd seen James cry more in the past month than in our entire 5 years together, as if the wall of Blackwell's stoicism had finally crumbled. She told me things about my mother, how she loved jazz, how she wrote poetry, how she was working on a nursing degree before... He trailed off. Before she got pregnant with you, I finished gently. Yes, he swallowed hard. Layla said the family lost touch with Naomi after she moved to Boston. They knew she'd had a baby, but she told them the child was being raised by its father. They never suspected that you were living as a Blackwell, I said. He nodded. Layla has invited us to Chicago. She's organizing a family reunion. Apparently, I have 2 half-brothers, Naomi's sons from her marriage later in life, and grandparents who are still alive, Eliza. My actual grandparents. The wonder in his voice broke my heart all over again. Are you going to go? I want us to go, he said, finally meeting my eyes. All 3 of us. But I understand if you're not ready for that. I looked toward the bassinet where our daughter slept peacefully. Have you spoken to your parents, to Richard and Vivian, since that day? His expression hardened. Richard called again yesterday. The company board is concerned about the changes in my demeanor. Apparently, I'm not projecting the right Blackwell image in meetings. And you said? That maybe the Blackwell image needed changing. A small, defiant smile played at his lips. I've started looking into the company's hiring practices, pay disparities, the way we've developed properties in historically black neighborhoods. They won't like that, I said, but with admiration rather than warning. No, they won't. He sighed. Vivian sent a gift for Naomi yesterday. I returned it. I raised an eyebrow. That seems harsh. The card said, to our granddaughter Alexandra. His jaw tightened. She couldn't even use the name we chose, the name honoring my real mother. I understood then that reconciliation with the elder Blackwells would be a long, difficult road, if it happened at all. "What do you want, James?" I asked softly. "Not what Richard and Vivian want, not what I want, but you." He was silent for a long moment. "I want to know who I really am, beyond the Blackwell name and money. I want to connect with my mother's family, to learn about that half of my heritage that was kept from me. I want to be the kind of father who never makes his daughter question her worth or identity." His eyes found mine. "And I want to rebuild what we had, Eliza. I know I failed you in that delivery room. I know trust isn't rebuilt overnight. But I love you, and I want to be the husband you deserve if you'll give me that chance." I took a deep breath. "I'm still hurt, James. When I needed you most, you hesitated." "I know," he whispered. "I'll spend the rest of my life making that up to you. But," I continued, "watching you stand up to them, seeing you embrace your true identity and heritage, it reminds me of the man I fell in love with. The real James, not the Blackwell heir." The bassinet stirred as Naomi made a small noise in her sleep. We both froze, waiting to see if she would wake. When she settled again, I continued. "I think going to Chicago is a good idea. Meeting your family, connecting with your roots, that's important for all of us." Relief washed over his face. "Really?" I nodded. "Naomi deserves to know all sides of her heritage, including the family that her grandmother tried to erase." James reached out tentatively, and this time I moved closer, allowing him to put his arm around me. It wasn't complete forgiveness, but it was a start. "There's something else," he said. "I've been thinking about changing my name, our name." I looked up, surprised. "To Jackson, maybe a hyphenate, Blackwell Jackson or Jackson Blackwell." He shrugged. "I haven't decided yet. Part of me wants to cut ties completely with the Blackwell legacy, but another part recognizes that it is still who I am, who I was raised to be." "You don't have to decide everything right now," I reminded him. "We have time." In the bassinet, Naomi began to stir in earnest, her tiny face scrunching up as she prepared to demand her next feeding. As James went to pick her up, I watched him cradle our daughter with such tenderness, it made my heart ache. Her skin tone, the texture of her hair, the very features that had sparked such ugliness in that delivery room were now points of connection to a heritage and family he was just beginning to discover. "Hey there, little one," he whispered. "Want to meet your mom? She loved jazz and poetry, just like you're going to love them." In that moment, I saw our path forward. Not an easy one, but one filled with truth, discovery, and healing. The Blackwell facade had cracked open, revealing something far more valuable than wealth or status: authenticity. As James placed our daughter in my arms, I saw in her face not just her father's features or my own, but the lineage of a woman named Naomi Jackson. A woman who, through the miracle of genetics and the power of truth, had finally come home.